Mr. Rana Kapoor. We are delighted to have with us the man who has the vision to build the Global Quality Park in India by 2020. He is Mr. Rana Kapoor, the founder CEO of Yes Bank. Mr. Kapoor currently heads the prestigious industry body Assocham as its president. He was acknowledged as the best Indian banker and was conferred Entrepreneurial Banker of the Decade Award by the Bombay Management Association. Mr. Kapoor has received the Asian Banker CEO Leadership Achievement Award for India. This award was given for actively driving the vision of responsible banking. He was ranked the second most valuable Indian CEO of the year by Business World magazine. Mr. Rana Kapoor holds an honorary fellowship from All India Management Association and doctorate in science from India's foremost and oldest agri university. He was honoured with Distinguished Entrepreneurship Award at the PhD Chamber Awards for Excellence. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Rana Kapoor to share his global views and success formulae with us.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's not easy to speak after a legend, Mr. Rahul Bajaj. I will try and do my best. It's very, I would say, invigorating and very motivational to be present here with such distinguished leadership, with a lot of contagious energy, as I can experience and witness across this particular venue. Interestingly, there are a lot of creative injections, creative interactions and interventions I see from the moment I entered this particular venue. I'm also very happy to be invited by IMA for this 24th session, and I need not elaborate on the fact that IMA is recognized as one of the most powerful management associations for its pioneering innovation, for its exemplary leadership role models, for knowledge sharing in the fields of management. And I'm certain that these 2 days are going to be extremely enriching for all the distinguished delegates, the faculty, the students, and business leaders who have all amalgamated here. I think the subject has been addressed quite substantially by Mr. Bajaj, and I would like to move on to what I believe is a very key issue in terms of Indian business, Indian opportunities going forward. So I've chosen a subject of business excellence driven by skill development and the key pillars that are required to actualize the Indian economy's next stratospheric change. I think investment in creating a culture of innovation and business excellence is really the need of the hour. And I would like to believe that this is going to be driven substantially by design thinking, innovation practices, which is a national imperative. We have to recognize that India has done very well as a core economy, but we have not had major strides, major accomplishments, other than, of course, the recent satellite that went to Mars, which was a tremendous frugal innovation. But if I can just get your attention and do a very quick poll as I speak about business excellence driven by innovation and design, think of the top 3 companies in the world today. Fairly nascent. Some of the names that come to your mind, my mind, Apple, for example, Google, for instance, Facebook. Now, these are the kind of companies which occupy our minds today. Not very many years ago, just a few years ago, we had other names like Dell, Xerox, Microsoft, Ford, and these IBM, for instance, and these were the world leaders. So there is a huge shift, a tectonic shift which is taking place in terms of the way the world is designing and innovating. And when you look at some of these great companies, even Samsung I would like to add as a great company, there are certain questions that come to your mind. At least there are 4 or 5 questions which come to my mind. Simple questions. What do these companies have in common for them to make the best products? Are these also affordable products? I would say is first question. To what extent do they focus on innovation as a key differentiator, as a key driver in their product proposition? The third question that comes to my mind is, do they have the best talent? And even more importantly, are they able to grow and retain this talent in their organizations? And a fourth question, do they run agile organizations, lean, efficient companies to be able to make global difference? Invariably, you'll find all of these issues are more or less manifested in great companies, and certainly the few that I mentioned just now. I don't want to sound like a management guru because I'm a hardcore practitioner. And in my experience in assessing many companies, global and most definitely in my own country, having been a banker who became an entrepreneur about 17, 18 years ago, that in assessment of companies, invariably you find that there are 3 or 4 factors which also make a very big difference in the way enterprises succeed. Because business excellence through innovation requires a certain, and I would like to believe, a 3-factor virtuous circle. The number 1 factor is to me about how you visualize. Number 2 is naturally about how to strategize. And number 3 is the actualization of your vision and strategy. And therefore, some very basic questions. What is your vision? How to achieve this vision? And most of all, how to execute strategy vigorously, rigorously, every day. And I think we will more or less conclude that actualization is really where the maximum weightage ought to be. Because vision and strategy can be very often replicated, it can be copied, but the mechanism, the practices, the forces, the energy we apply in actualization, to me, is really what makes great organizations. And to me, how execution is driven to a very large extent is predicated on the design, the organizational design, on the frameworks we create, the enablement. So design to me is not just about aesthetics or products, but how businesses can imagine, how they can innovate, and most of all, how they can consummate some of these actions. I spoke briefly about Apple, but I'm sure just about a week ago, when Apple announced their results, you would have noticed that apart from the largest quarterly profit of $18 billion, which is the largest ever any corporate in the world has made, it translated to almost $8.3 million profit a day and a whopping $2,270 a second. But equally important is the fact that they sell 34,000 iPhones every hour almost, and that was more or less the number of phones they sold every day in their last quarter. The fact is, we have to figure out what happened that brought about this huge metamorphosis in Apple, which used to be a regular American company. Pre-Steve Jobs, the industrial design group called IDG in Apple was dispersed across various functions and had no real distinct organizational design to support innovation. When Steve Jobs came back to the company, he made design and innovation the principal focus of the company, and he gave the design team the authority to produce these designs without making any compromises, without any trade-offs. Unfortunately, most organizations in our own country are not designed and structured through meticulous planning. They just evolve over time, more often than not, and the organizational design becomes more and more complex over time, very often stifling innovation and also impacting execution capabilities and competencies. So therefore, it takes me to the next point. The next point is, how do organizations really communicate, not just externally, more importantly, how do they communicate internally? Most organizations land up spending a lot of their resources, time, 80-90% on external stakeholder management, very often with clients and shareholders, regulators, government, etc. And even the communication design of most companies does not factor in the internal requirements to grow and to communicate horizontally within the organizations. So in my judgment, business excellence and designing and innovating in a company very often has to engineer communication in a rock-solid manner. And there is a simple 3E formula that I have for this. First and foremost, the energy of the organization. How do we really drive the energy? How well is the communication being laterally shared within various departments? How is the creative energy? Like you can feel a lot of creative energy in the IMA here. That how in an organization is the energy being driven? Are employees giving their 100%? As I witnessed a few minutes ago in my branch in Indore. So energy followed by engagement of employees. Are they talking laterally? Are they working in vertical groups? How is the organization really able to drive synergies? Are there meetings happening? We, for example, in Yes Bank designed a program called Branch Executive Leadership Program, where a branch manager, while he is hosting a number of different businesses, was required to pull everybody together, very often people not reporting to him, but to be able to get them together and to synergize the marketplace together. And we find it works very, very well for us because you have a one branch, one bank representation in the marketplace. The third thing is really exploring within the organization. So communication, exploration to a very large extent also makes a very big difference. That how are customer product groups interfacing with the product prototype group? Very often people work and produce, but they don't go to businesses and seek interactions. So I think the overall exploration within the organization to determine needs and to fulfill those needs by interactive communication becomes very, very important. Because I have a few minutes with you, I'd like to share Yes Bank, which is just about 10 years old. In its overall construct in a business of banking, which is a very old business, had to create some non-legacy sort of differentiation. So recognizing where the economy stood, from the very inception of our young bank, 10 odd years old now, we chose to specialize in sunrise businesses where India would gradually develop competitive and comparative advantage. For example, agribusiness. In a short span of time, we've been able to create impact across the country in terms of our teams who are working in agriculture, in agribusiness advisory, in agribusiness lending, and this has happened through a very diagnostic and a very prescriptive approach. Sometimes we call it just being good money doctors. There are a few more examples I could talk about. For example, the need of the hour in our country's infrastructure. So we started hiring people to a very large extent from industry. Not having bankers who understand very often thermal power or renewable energy, for that matter, transportation and logistics. So a lot of industry resources have been hired, and we have tried to make them work with bankers. So the industry and banking linkages have been built to be able to give a superior proposition. And to me, this is about exploring the organization's needs and most of all, trying to fulfill customer needs. So as I end my brief talk, that it's exceedingly important for innovation and entrepreneurship in India as we make orbit-changing interventions to actually look at design-driven innovation, and that has been really the main point I wanted to share with you today. Thank you very much.